because they might think I'm being insensitive. We are living in a democracy and we are not happy with it. If what you want is a model of South African politics, nitokhala.
Stokhala. I think sifuna ukufika lapho sitibonela khona ukuthi I know sesiyakhala ke manje, you know, because last khona manje, like where we are right
it's
now,
not nice.
Nice is putting it lightly. Nice is really putting it lightly. I mean, where we are right now certainly is not working. I think the system has already collapsed. I mean, if you look at the social issues that we have currently, you know, I was saying, if you look at the education system, that is collapsing. For more than a month and a half now, universities have been closed. Students are not receiving their allowances. You know, and we have a lot of suicides that is coming out of, you know, students because of the frustration. Remember, in Swaziland, because of the high unemployment rate. So if I'm a student, I apply for a scholarship because nobody at home can afford to take me to university. I apply for a scholarship to the government. And then if I'm lucky, I'll get the scholarship. But then there's an allowance for me to be able to obviously sustain myself or buy books or, you know. But then the government does not pay the allowance for like 3 months. Remember, I can't go back home and say, I don't have food, because at home they don't have food themselves. You know, so then you start understanding the realities that, you know, especially young people have to face. And there's no reason why, you know, students just can't get full scholarships and the allowances are paid consistently as they should, because the money is there. You know, the money is there. It just goes to the king, most of it. So, I mean, if you look at the health sector, not having drugs, I'm going to hospital, I'm sick, and I get there and they say to me, there's nothing I can do for you because we don't have the medication. That is the reality of, you know, what Amaswati are living under. So the material conditions are very, very difficult in Swaziland right now as we speak. You know, so those are some of the issues where we're saying no, but we can't continue to have a king that is controlling, you know, 50%, more than 50% of the budget goes to him. When we are having a crisis in the health care, when we're having a crisis in the education system, why is it that you know, so much money must go to him? Just recently, and this, you know, some of the things that we feel, I think. It's important for people to understand that I think Amaswati are waging their own struggle. I don't think that they're looking for anyone to come and save them. You can support them, and I think they're capable of waging their struggle, but then don't work against them. You see, if you're going to have an African Union that comes and donates 300,000 euros, you know, that's millions, and it donates it to the very same government that is very much aware, evidence has been provided over at least the last 15 years about where these funds are going, you know. But you still continue to fund a state that is undemocratic, a state that is abusing and violating human rights. It means you are working against the people that are calling for change, because you are empowering, you know, the crown instead of the people, because you're empowering the crown so that they are able to reinforce on the military, so that they are able to continue to oppress the people, so that they continue to live in fear, so that they don't express that they want change, so that the king can continue to benefit from the wealth of the country, which belongs to everybody who is in Swaziland.
So I've never been to Zimbabwe, chiefly because of the state of the country and the animosity the people have against South Africans. I feel at home in Botswana. I feel at home in Mozambique. I feel at home in Swaziland. I mean, Swaziland is the country that I visit more than any other country. So I was disappointed with Mozambique because I wanted to go to Mozambique this coming holidays. And things have changed. Because when there's I don't want to say civil war, when there's a national unrest, Butsotsi come in. In South Africa, you would know and you would agree with me, this democracy has allowed social ills that we did not have before.
Yeah.
When you become a democracy, your door opens things that you are unimaginable. Rights and democracy come with certain responsibilities that because you are poor, you don't imagine. And I'm not trying to scare you. I'm just trying to warn you that there are things we envy in certain countries that you guys can still do. Like, I'm being honest with you, when you're in Swaziland, I mean, you see a cop, you are happy. You understand? In South Africa, when you see a cop, you are not sure if the cop is going to abuse you or if is indeed a real cop. You understand? Those are the remnants of a democratic state that we live in. So the interventions from a foreign country would have been expected from ANC and the ruling party, because it's the ruling party in government, and that is not forthcoming. Ever since ever since antiquity, nations will strengthen their alliances by marrying their daughters off to certain kingdoms to protect each other and form alliances, because if those people from that side are married to our people, we become one nation and we are able to unite and become one. And this is what has happened in the biggest Nguni nation in South Africa with Amazulu. They've been having relations this side. I mean, the late Queen, who his son now is the ruler of Amazulu Kingdom, is of Swati descent. Umsholozi, who's the leader of MK Party, a significant leader in the Zulu nationalism politics, whose daughter has just recently been welcomed in the Zulu royal house. Those are examples of how nations form unity. Do you think this unity is good because now you are crying and no one is listening to you? Do you think those unities are good for you?
I honestly,
because they are not going to speak against their own.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how to answer that one. Because,
it's a difficult one.
Yeah, because I think it's also unfair on the Swazi people, where there might be, the unity might be imposing the current system, you see, because they know the current system and they are calling for a change to the system, you see. And I think marrying and strengthening relations, I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with. But if the agenda is to impose the current system, then it's a problem.
Because you can't speak against your ally.
Then it's a problem. It's a big problem. So I think yeah, like I'm saying, it's a difficult one. I mean, MK is just a fairly new party, you know. So it's interesting to see things as they are unfolding, you know. And yeah, like I'm saying, if it's to impose the current system, then we're gonna have a problem.
But don't get me wrong. I'm not saying they are doing all these marital ceremonial things to impose anything. I'm just saying they are strengthening bonds between common relations. By the way, I speak a lot in this podcast about, statistically, there are more Amaswati people living in South Africa than in Swaziland. The same in Botswana, because there are about 2,100,000, about 2.1 people of Botswana living in Botswana. But there are more Botswana in South Africa than in Botswana. The same as Lesotho. There are more Basotho in South Africa than in Lesotho. And this, I'm talking about the unity of Africans. Why is it difficult to unite? As someone who has Swaziland in your heart, would it be better if Swaziland becomes a province of South Africa?
No, I don't think it would be better.
It wouldn't be better. You want Swaziland to exist as a country?
Yeah, I think you must also remember, I would see the conditions must dictate whether or not in this particular moment being a province of South Africa is something that, you know, is would be a good thing. So I'm saying in this moment, I don't think it will be a good idea. I do think that Amaswati need to be given the freedom that they're asking for in terms of multi-party democracy. They need to experience that, you know, as a country in themselves, you know, and be able to really chart their own path, you know, in terms of...
So you don't want African unity?
Not necessarily we don't want African unity, but I think...
This is what I preach in my podcast,
yeah.
to say, as Africans, we are stronger, united together, and negotiating as one. Mm-hmm. Let me give an example. I don't like it when, even though he's our biggest friend, Putin, when he wants to talk, he says, I've spoken to Africa. you understand?
Yeah.
Because there's no Africa that talks. It's different Africans that talk. So the more we unite, the better. He can say, I've spoken to America. He's talking about the two continents,
yeah.
North and South America.
Yeah.
But in essence, he's actually talking about the United States,
yes.
who happen to be in the north of America. So these terms, maybe because I read too much geopolitics,
yeah.
it hurts me as an African because it perpetuates this inferiority complex. You can't say you're having a Russia-Africa conversion, and then all these kings come line up to meet Putin. Mm-hmm. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
No, I don't like it. But if we do not want to merge, how do you want, when according to you, do you want us to continue being separate Africa?
Not necessarily that I want us to continue to be in separate Africa. I'm just thinking at this particular point right now, I think we have a lot to work on. I mean, if you look at Africa in itself in the different regions, I think that there's a lot of work that needs to be done at an individual level. And I think I worry a lot about the leadership that we have currently in Africa, and I think perhaps that's what's not giving one the confidence to say, I know, you know, we could definitely have a one Africa, and you know, it will be very prosperous for everyone, and you know, we'll be together and we'll be seen as one, and which I think those narratives are correct. I just maybe am holding back a little bit because I can see the lack of proper leadership that we have in Africa, because I think a lot of the situations that we find ourselves in the different countries, I mean, you spoke about Zim. I had a very different experience in Zim, you know, in terms of the people in Zim. You spoke about Zim, Mnangagwa right now, you know, and what he's doing, you know, to ensure that he holds on to the power, that he closes the space, that there is no vibrant democracy in Swaziland because he needs to be in power is a problem. You go to Moz. You know what's currently happening in Moz. Again, a reflection of leadership for me in terms of ensuring that there is a consistent continuation of ensuring that they hold on to power at the detriment, you know, of the citizens themselves. And obviously, you have a case this side, which is not even a democracy, which is Swaziland. Again, the problem there is the leader who does not want to relinquish power, you know, to be shared amongst the people, by the people, you know, because he wants to hold on to it. So the question of leadership, for me is one perhaps we need to try and understand for us to be able to reflect on this one Africa a little bit more better than right now. Because I think if we don't address that issue, it's not going to be all glory and honey on the other side of one Africa, because you would have accumulated this culture of leaders, into this one Africa. Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, I'm not talking about the now and the immediate now. So let me give you an example. Western Sahara people, Sahrawi, are enslaved people in Morocco, and they live in the desert. They are pushed into a desert, and they are just inferior citizens in a country where it's very you hardly ever see those things, because Morocco is supported by a lot of Western countries because they are lighter. And you will always understand why they don't even think. North parts of Africa, it's called Arabia. North parts, let me repeat, north parts of Africa is called Arabia by themselves. Liberians and Moroccans and and even Egyptians, they call that place Arabia. The reason they call it Arabia because they do not want to be called African. And then when they talk about us, they say sub-Saharan Africa. That is deliberate. South Sudan, a baby country. So baby just came out. They separated that country. They created it to stop an everlasting war. Because you think they might do that in Nigeria to cut the northern parts, the northeastern parts, and let it live by itself, so the Boko Haram doesn't bother anyone. They can continue being a Muslim country. You think of all of those things, and you ask yourself, what is the solution? We can't keep cutting, dismantling each other into small pockets. You understand?
Yeah.
Because it becomes very difficult to speak in one voice. And it is in that vein to say, the more we cut each other small, is the more we'll not live together. That's why I do not support Orania, and I do not support Western Cape Republic, because it benefits white people when we are separate. That's why we had Bantustans and stuff.
Yeah.
Kangwani and stuff was a republic in South Africa for Amaswati. So don't get me wrong. I'm just saying, in future, what would be a long-term solution according to you? Because you see, with this one, the governments around SADC love the status quo. They are not going to change the status quo. You do not have elections. It's an African to speak about someone's in his past tense. It might sound disrespectful, but because I'm a journalist, I respectfully want to talk about it. So culturally, when the king leaves, because I can't say otherwise, if the king leaves, who takes over in this instance? Who should take over?
Who should take over?
Yes.
Culturally.
As we speak, yes, as we speak.
So, I mean, if he dies today, are you trying to make a comparison in terms of...
In South Africa, we know. I'm just giving an example. Yeah. In South Africa, it's clear.
Yeah.
If Ramaphosa happens to not be here, we know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So in
the context of the political change now, who should take over?
Yeah.
Multi-party democracy should just come in.
Not what you want.
Why not what the people want?
No, not what you want. What will happen? What will happen if the man is no longer there?
And there'll be another king appointed.
Yeah, this succession, how is it going to have to happen? Because I remember when Usobuswa left, you would understand the reason I'm using words like this and not being, is just to respect a sitting king. So if Usobuswa, when he left, the current king, he was still young, right?
Very young, yeah.
Makostiwe, right? So he was still young. So there was a region to hold on to him, for him, and then he came into power. So I'm saying, if now he leaves, then what happens? What should happen culturally?
Culturally, the same process when his dad left.
So there is, as we speak, heir to the throne.
Sorry?
As we speak, there is an heir to the throne.
As we speak, there is an heir to the throne, even though we might not know who it is.
Yes, of course. Yeah. So that this question is essentially why I'm asking you, or in the long term, what's going to happen, because whoever becomes this heir to the throne is just going to continue this culture, and there's not going to be international intervention. You understand why I'm asking you that? What is the long gain solution? Because you'll keep knocking. They do not want to open. What is the long-term goal? What is it that you want? Because this you have tried. Let me give an example. You know Bramba, Yuma Sikila.
Yeah.
When they left, he talks about they left, others went to New York, others went to somewhere. They had this thing ringing in their head. They said, free in 63. So in the late 50s, and this is when MK, the real MK, started, and they started branching out. They thought, no, Rabo is Kali. I'm being honest, they thought Rabo is Kali. And then in 1969, at Morogoro conference of the ANC, will always, I say in the podcast, in my channel, they know I will always use ANC as a reference. And I'm unashamed about that. In the 1969 conference, they started breaking apart and eating each other because the patients reigned out. They thought they were going to take over. They're just a temporary, but they realized, no, this is very long. And 1969 Morogoro is a watershed conference because they had to change a lot of their thinking and stuff. So that's what I'm asking you. You might be thinking, plus the king will leave and then the next one is going to come when they need to come. You realize, hey, how long has it been now? You can understand. I'm saying when the decree was declared in 1973, as you say, to now, you say it's been 50 years, and before you know it, now so go. So what is the long-term plan?
I mean, that's the reality of waging a struggle.
True.
You don't do it for this generation. You do it for the next generation. At least you leave it some way for the next generation, whether to carry it or not. So certainly the long-term solution is to dismantle the current system. That's just the long-term solution.
And replace it with a democratic country.
Multi-party democracy.
Multi-party democracy that would model something similar to South Africa.
Probably. I'm saying probably. In the sense that you see, Swaziland is very traditional as well, and I think that asking for multi-party democracy does not say there's no space for tradition, but tradition should not be used as a weapon against the people. Tradition should not be used to abuse the people, and there's elements within the tradition that are abusive and that are oppressive, and those are the elements that would need to be dealt with. But Swazis are very, very traditional, and I think that's one of the beautiful things about Swaziland. They're very community-based, as opposed to individualism that comes with the Western thinking and the Western modeling of governance systems as well. So those are elements that I would want to retain, because those elements are who we are. Those elements is what makes us Swazi. So saying multi-party democracy does not say we'll do away with tradition, because it's who we are. It's being able to say through that multi-party, how do we configure that multi-party system to ensure it reflects Amaswati as who they are. I think that is the question, the configuration of the multi-party system.
I've always asked myself, how do Europeans do it? Like, you would find the Danish would have a king, and there are a lot of European countries who still have their kingdoms. I mean, the royals at Windsor. I mean, England is a fully Western country, but it still have its royals, and they would drive in expensive cars. I mean, conspicuous consumption of wealth, unlimited resources. And I would ask myself, people in London cry. I've got people and I follow channels of people, they would cry that country is unlivable. I was hearing someone say, if you sell a flat in London, if it's one, I'm just giving an example, South African context, if it's 1,500,000 is tax. Can you just imagine that? In England, I mean, we're talking about England, an example of a thriving democracy that has 50, just imagine South Africans would cry, 50%.
Yeah, that's a lot.
It's taxed. I mean, why do you even want to sell it? You understand how difficult it is? So, I was listening to this channel. This guy was going to real estate people. See, I think that unbearable. And that's why people say South Africans don't want to travel a lot. Because people who live in USA and stuff, they have to leave 2-3 jobs just to sustain themselves. It is hard, Qhawekazi. It is very hard. And people come back, even white people who did not want to be led by Africans. They went to New Zealand and Australia. They came back because they actually realized that South Africa is actually a better country. And I just told you the problem that we have. But we are a better country than a lot of countries. The reason I'm stating all of these things is it's not all rosy after this thing. But how do royals of another country make it work? You hardly find, I mean, I'm sorry it doesn't happen. You hardly find the English fighting that they want to dismantle their thing. This balance, I don't know how they do it. This balance, how can you make it work for Swaziland that you do not lose the king and his power, but you have a system of democracy similar to them? Because that would be a compromise for me, and it would evade, the 2021 massacre. I mean, that thing was not nice. Us seeing it on TV. I'm just because I love Amaswati. Like I told you, I love Swaziland. How do you strike this balance, and how are you going to win? Does Podemo have a model of how they can do it, and how will it work? I don't know how they do it in Europe, by the way. I'm just asking out of ignorance.
I mean, I think in Europe, one experience I had was Norway, Oslo, where it's more symbolic, really, to have the king there. He really does not interfere in, the governance.
But he gets his stuff.
And he's sitting there quietly.
He's taken care of.
Nicely. Whenever there's something being opened, he will go and, So that was quite an experience for me. And also seeing how strong the democracy is in Norway. By me experiencing it, they keep their democracy alive. They have a lot of civil society.
It doesn't intimidate the royal house.
Not at all. There's a lot of very, very strong civil organizations that ensure that accountability, continues. So that was very interesting. I mean, we have examples here in Africa, Lesotho. Right? There's a monarch in Lesotho.
Okay.
Yeah. How do they balance it? What's so special about Mswati and his absolute monarchy that he wants?
Yeah, see,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So we do have African examples of well-functioning multi-party democracy, and there's still like a constitutional monarchy, for instance.
When we do that, the difficulty, sorry to interject, the difficulty would be Lesotho is an impoverished country, and it becomes very difficult. Because the reason I was comparing it with, you will hardly ever hear reports of the king of Lesotho, Moshoeshoe, or whoever flew into Sandton, closed the shop, Gucci and stuff, and flew back, and they were seen in Monaco dining with the royals. You see, and I'm not saying that it doesn't happen. I'm just saying you hardly ever see it. So it doesn't have the same legs as your royals. Your royals are treated harshly by newspapers. I mean, and I'm not even sure if I'm saying harshly, is it a good representation? But you hardly ever hear good stories out of them. I mean, a king, I always insist, there's a reason he's a king. He's not like me.
How is he not like you?
He's not like me because if I'm a civilian, I'm a subject of a king. That I gave you an example of me in a kingdom, before a harvest, the king will have to do blah, blah, blah. And I've always believed that those things are a way of making sure that no one will outshine the king. You understand what I'm saying? Because there should be, the reason you are a king is because you are above mere mortals. That's just my understanding.
Yeah.
If you have a king, you must just understand that you can't be equal to him. And this is what democracy tries to do with VIPs, because they drive with their blue light cars and stuff. This is what they're trying to promote, because this system is a natural system. Even in nature, there are hierarchies of people. There's a matriarch, there's a patriarchy. So it's natural. Whoever is the leader will not be having the same responsibilities and influence as the other one. And it is in that context. But on a humanitarian level, I understand when you say he's just like me. In a humanitarian level.
Oh, but he's also human.
He's also human.
Yeah, so
but what I'm saying is, he can't eat pap.
Why not?
No, listen to me.
Yeah.
He can't eat pap because the country is suffering. You understand? He can't eat pap only and askaba lesshebo because the country is suffering.
That's exactly what he should, because he's the leader of the people. So if you are a leader, it's the people before yourself.
Then that can be a monarchy. Then it must be a democracy. You understand what I'm saying?
No, I mean,
because
even
a king, according to me, and I'm not, and I understand why you want to dismantle the system, because it doesn't make you happy. But I'm just saying, a king is a king. The royals are royals because they are naturally above the normal people.
No, they're not naturally above.
No.
I think that
in the system, yeah.
I mean, I think that we have now made them to be above.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's the natural state of things.
Yeah.
I think that, I mean, it's just I don't have the historic context about kings. And,
yes.
But you must remember that we are African, right? Ubuntu is at the core of who we are.
Yes.
And having Ubuntu is as simple as understanding that, you must be able to share. I can't go hungry when you have so much and you are not able to give to me. And this thing I would say, I totally do disagree with it, that he can't eat pap, for instance.
No, it's just
as an example,
an attempt to give you an example that.
And that he's above. He shouldn't. He's placed there. The reason why he was placed there is to ensure that he takes care of his people. Mm-hmm. He wasn't placed there to exploit his people, which is what he's doing right now. And therefore, he should not be above his people. Yes, his people might give things and give him things so that they are able to say thank you for the way in which you are treating us. But we cannot now say he should be above, he should have better, taking from the people. I don't think that's, and if I had the right historic context of what monarchies are and why they are there, I think would understand better that what is happening right now is not a natural state of things. How Mswati is living and taking from and exploiting the people of Swati is not a natural state of things. And ultimately, all of us are human. Even though you might be a king, you are just adorned with particular responsibilities, and you must respect the people that have adorned you with those responsibilities, so that they are able to respect you. It's not just you expecting the respect from them. So I think that narrative then, again goes back to the question of leadership. Leadership can't be above the people it serves. It should not be like that. Leadership should be equal to the people it serves. Yes, the people will elevate you because you're a good leader. They will elevate you in their own terms. But you can't then expect that because I'm a leader, now I'm better, now I must, sit somewhere, now I must, I think that's where we lose a lot of things in translation, and that's where we find ourselves in a lot of challenging situations, particularly here in Africa, because we also idolize. We start idolizing, these kings or these leaders. And that's not what we should be doing. We'll put you there because we see something in you that you'll be able to take us from here as a leader to here in terms of where we want to go. And not necessarily that you are a better human being, etc., etc. So, yeah, I think that would be my
No, I understand.
narrative,
I completely understand what you're saying, because what you are saying is, continue with my analogy. So, you're saying eating pap only without sishebo would be a symbolic way of saying, I understand the predicament that my people are going through. You spoke about, the university being closed for 2 months because there's no funds. You spoke about running short of medication. So, for example, in other words, you would say, because it's sympathetic with those people, I can't be seen to be splurging a lot of wealth. It will be like spitting in the face of the poor, in a way. Is that what you're saying?
No, I mean, we shouldn't be sympathetic. You should just make sure that the people get what they need to get because it belongs to them. You shouldn't feel sorry for them for something that belongs to them and how he's spending it. He must just give back what belongs to the people, and then he won't have to feel sympathetic. So I think my view is that everything that's in Swaziland does not belong to him, Mswati. It belongs to the people, right?
So if you had a democracy, sorry to interject, if we had a democracy and it's Cyril Ramaphosa, during the hard lockdown, people were saying, wherever he is, he's playing with his kids in a big house. You know, Cyril Ramaphosa has lots of farms and all over the country. He can fly anywhere he wants. We are confined to our little mkukunyana. You understand? So people were not happy. So I just want to understand, and I'm not dampening down the need to have a democracy. Do you think, according to you, if he had, according to you, if you had a democracy of a person who behaved exactly like him, you would then it will then be easy for you to remove that person?
Yeah.
Okay, no, I understand.
Because then I guess it goes back to what the majority at that time will then say and want. I mean, I think every system has its challenges. I mean, democracy has its challenges.
Yes.
Monarchies have their own challenges, and reformist countries have their own challenges. So every system has its challenge. But I think there are fundamentals in each system, and what we are calling for are those fundamentals to be realized and recognized and practiced in Swaziland. And one of those is freedom of choice, and one of those is freedom of association. We want to associate with multi-parties in the country, so they must unban the political parties so that it's our choice. We want to associate with them. So there are those fundamentals. We also want the share in the wealth of the country, because it's our right, it belongs to us. So those are the fundamentals that we're saying are not there right now. And if we are to do anything, we need to ensure there's those fundamentals first, so that we are able to then say, okay, what are the challenges with these fundamentals in place? The level of repression in Swaziland is mind-boggling. If I would take you and we'd go there and I would show you, I heard you earlier on, you're saying when you get to Swaziland, you're happy to see a cop. The reality is not that. The reality is not that. Remember, the cops pledge allegiance to the king. Yeah. So they're not even there to protect the people. They are there to, ensure that they discharge of their duties in accordance to what the king wants. Oh. Yeah, that's why there's
So you say that's usually against the people?
It is. It is usually against the people. I mean, we saw what happened in 2021. Live rounds on unarmed people. It happens now today. If you're an activist and you're very active and you're still in the country, you are going to be targeted by the police, So, yeah, I think...
Okay, so let me do this.
Yeah.
We've been struggling to remove people for 30 years in South Africa who we thought they were not right. So let me do this. You are going to march, right?
Yes, we are.
When?
On the 5th of December, we are having Justice for Swaziland March in Pretoria. So we gather at the Union Buildings and we're marching to the Swaziland High Commission just up the street in Arcadia. Yeah.
So this is what I'm going to do. Can I read the demands and you tell me what does it mean? If it's self-explanatory, I think we'll leave it. Okay. Your demands are an independent investigation into the assassination of Thulani Maseko. We call for an independent international inquiry conducted by a neutral and credible body. Why? Who would this be? This ICC, for example?
I mean, there's many independent institutions outside of the big, well-known institutions.
Yeah.
I mean, you have ACOD, for instance, here in South Africa, which is a mediating body.
Yeah.
So there's many methods and ways in which an independent investigation can be done with a credible source. There's the United Nations, for instance. So, like I'm saying, the method or who is the credible body is something that probably needs to be engaged on because there's a variety on it. I think what's important there is that we must have that independent and credibility. I mean, it's going for 2 years now. Comrade Thulani passed on. He was assassinated. There's nothing known about what's going on, and this is the reality of impunity in Swaziland. We don't know who has been held accountable for the victims and those we lost in 2021 up to this day.
All right. Immediate release of all political prisoners. We call for the unconditional freedom of individuals imprisoned for expressing their political beliefs or exposing the current regime. How many prisoners plus minus are you talking about here?
Sure. I mean, 2021, I'm sure there's more than 100 that came from there.
Who've been arrested from 2021?
21, yes.
Were there court trials or anything?
The system also. Some of them are charged, some of them are still waiting trial, but consistently since 2021, the state then targets those who were at the forefront of the activism, and they then go and they apprehend them, and a lot of them are. I know particular ones, about 25 young people, very, very young people, between the periods of 2022 and some very recent, they were apprehended because they were
participating in 2021.
Not participating in 2021, they were participating as we speak, because the struggle continues. Yeah, so they're still participating, in the struggle, and they participated obviously in 2021.
Okay, the third one looks like this. The other one, it says, overturn the unjust sentences of Baqede Mabuza and Mthandeni Dube. We demand the immediate review and overturning of the unjust sentences against pro-democracy MPs Baqede Mabuza and Mthandeni Dube.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing, this one you explained.
Yeah, I don't.
Okay. Repatriation of all political exiles. We demand the return of all political exiles to their homeland, ensuring that they are no longer persecuted for their views. So comrades need to go back home with a guarantee that they will not be targeted.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know them by name, if need be?
There's a lot of them.
All right,
There's a lot of them.
Number 5, unbanning of political parties. We call for the legal recognition and affected, or am I reading it correctly? Unfettered operation of political parties, allowing for a diverse and pluralistic political landscape. Okay, so this is just a blanket ban that they must fully participate without banning. Number 6, democratic transition. The establishment of an inclusive, people-driven national dialogue to dismantle absolute monarchy and usher a new era of freedom, equality, and democratic governance. This was spoken at length in the podcast. Number 7, economic justice. Reforms to address economic inequality and ensure the wealth of Swaziland benefits all its citizens, not the crown. Until these demands are met, the struggle continues. The courage and sacrifices of Swazi people have proven that no regime, no matter how brutal, can suppress a collective will of determined nation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's just expressed.
Yeah.
And you gave us the dates.
Yeah.
Anything in closing that you want to say very quickly?
I just want to encourage, particularly South Africans, to be part of the march. I think it's an opportunity, to stand shoulder to shoulder, with the Amaswati in solidarity, but also just give the message as well that South Africans are also not happy about the situation in Swaziland. I don't think we want to be anywhere else except back home, our own homeland. So, it is really to encourage and also ensure that people understand the situation in Swaziland. I think we do have a bit of a situation where they hear what's going on, but they don't really understand. They think we're just fighting the king. All right.
Okay, Mashad Politically Incorrect. We're at the depth of this. We are out of resources. Thank you very much. Please tell us what you feel about this and how are you going to support. If Amaswati, tell us what's the best solution for all of this. We ventured in all types of solutions. What could be the best one? Just advise us and tell us which one is the best. Thank you. Itada.